Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. You are at the MoCo Underground Writers Showcase event, so if that's not where you planned on being, then you are in the wrong place, but you're still welcome to stay. I am Julia Taglier. I'm the founder and host of MoCo Underground Writers Showcase, and we have an exceptional event this evening. We are partnering with Washington Writers Publishing House to celebrate the launch of their new book, America's Future, which is an incredibly timely and important collection. I'm honored to be a part of it, and I'm thrilled to be welcoming Caroline Bach from Washington Writers Publishing House and other writers who are featured in this book, and I am so happy to have everybody here tonight. So I have a few little housekeeping things that I need to take care of first. First, I don't know if you notice I have a special little name tag on. It's very fancy. That's because I'm now an official board member for the Sandy Spring Museum. So I need to talk to you about becoming members. Thank you for attending this event. If you are already a member of Sandy Spring Museum, thank you. And I mean that as Julia, not just as a pitch that I have on the piece of paper in front of me. The museum has more than 600 members whose investment helps us provide free and low-cost programs, exhibits, and events all year round. Members also enjoy great benefits like 20% off event tickets and 10% off our gift shop right across the hallway with the holiday sale going on. All local artists' crafts in there. And I just went and shopped, and I am going to go broke by the end of the night. I'm just saying. So definitely make sure that you check out the shop, and you do get a 10% off if you are a member. So that's a good thing to do. If you would like to become a member, you can look for these cards. There's a table across the hall, and there are also a QR code. You can ask me about that, and you can go ahead and become a member online by using the QR code. Please consider your community museum as a member, supporting your community museum as a member today at just $45 for an individual membership and $75 for a family membership. It's just a few dollars a week to foster community and culture. And like many other organizations, the museum did wind up having an impact from loss of federal funding. So we are relying even more on our local community to support this wonderful, wonderful gem in our community. So you can see me for the QR code or a membership form, or you can also go to the desk. That's my board member spiel. Second spiel, I would like to talk to you about another thing that's coming up with the museum, and I don't know if I even told Caroline about this yet. So next year, I'm going to be teaching a series of 4 creative writing workshops here at the museum. Thank you. They are under the umbrella title of In the Garden of Liberty. On July 4th, 2026, the United States of America will mark the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. One of the most consequential yet imperfect documents in American history, Thomas Jefferson's proclamation would serve as the foundation for a new nation, the chance to write a whole new story. But America has changed greatly since its signing, from the end of slavery to women's suffrage and the civil rights movement. 250 years in, Americans may find themselves questioning its relevance or even its durability. Who gets to tell our nation's stories? How do we, the people, respond to our founders' blind spots? What do those foundational words, all men are created equal, really mean? Over the coming months, I hope that you will join me for this series of creative writing workshops for beginning to intermediate writers, participants incorporating unconventional writing styles ranging from hermit crab fiction to erasure poetry, and inspired by items from Sandy Spring Museum's archives and collections, will reflect upon, wrestle with, and respond to this complicated yet revered document and its impact on generations of Americans. So be on the lookout for that. That will be starting in January of next year, and I believe they're launching the registration information this evening. And you get a discount if you register for all 4, and if you're a member of the museum. Phew. I promise my piece in the book is much shorter than this. Let's see. Lastly, I would just like to thank Washington Writers Publishing House, the Sandy Spring Museum, and MMCTV for being here, doing a great job, making sure that our readers' work gets out into the community to a larger audience beyond the folks here in this room. So if you can clap loudly and cheer heartily all evening long, that would be wonderful. I would like now to welcome Caroline Bach from Washington Writers Publishing House. She's going to be taking it for most of the rest of the evening, but I'll be back towards the end. Thank you.
Well, wow, welcome everybody. Welcome to the 14th event the Washington Writers Publishing House has had this fall. It's our last event, our culmination of a huge celebration for our press. But before I get into that, I want to make sure I thank Julia, who has been such a wonderful friend of the Washington Writers Publishing House. I want to thank the Sandy Spring Museum. We love reading here in this beautiful room. It's the second year in a row that Julia's had us, and it's a really special year. So if you don't know what the Washington Writers Publishing House is, I have one line I love to say loud and proud. The Washington Writers Publishing House is the longest continuously operating literary nonprofit small press in the United States. We have been around since 1975. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we did it in a big way by putting our biggest, most ambitious anthology together, America's Future, Poetry and Prose in Response to Tomorrow. It has 164 writers, about a half a dozen you will hear tonight. It has 179 works. It's 526 pages. It opens with Congressman Jamie Raskin's Prose on America. So please, if you have not bought a copy, we have some on sale tonight for $25. It's also available everywhere books are sold. That said, I'm just thrilled to dive into our first reader, and then as we go on, I have some other news. As insiders, you get to hear about the press. But first, I don't want to keep our first writer waiting. Fran Abrams, who's been, again, another wonderful friend of the press. We've published her several times, including in America's Future. Fran has had her poems published, though, in numerous journals and anthologies, has a poem nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She has 4 books of poetry published, most recently a collection of nonet poems in a book entitled Traveling on the Number 9 Bus, copies of which are right here. So hopefully people will be buying a few books today. But Fran Abrams.
Thank you to Jonah and Caroline for making this incredible book possible. And a big thanks to Julia for keeping MoCo Underground Writers going. It's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy coming out here. I'm going to read 3 poems tonight. The first 2 include poems that are more of a worldwide look at the future of the world, of course, including the United States. And the third poem is about America's future from the anthology. I'm going to start with a poem called Dinosaurs of the Future. And I want to note that this will be published in the January 2026 edition of Pen in Hand, the Journal of the Maryland Writers Association. And every time I say that, I go, that's just next month. So we're almost, that's amazing. So here is Dinosaurs of the Future. And I always feel like I should put on my newsreel voice for this. Although there were no historians present to record the event, dinosaurs regained their supremacy over the earth in the year 3026. Eggs that had lain dormant more than 250 million years hatched when humans became extinct. Much like the dinosaurs themselves had vanished years ago. The newborn dinosaurs still had very small brains and were unsure what to make of the landscape, including the spacious structures suitable for shelter. Historians, had they been present, would have explained that these were big box stores left in disarray as the last of the humans looted them in their attempt to remain alive. The landscape was desolate. Nevertheless, green living plants suitable for dinosaur consumption grew in the cracks and crevices between abandoned buildings. The dinosaur population thrived as nature returned to its past abundance. When creatures from other planets arrived, expecting to capture a highly developed human culture, they found only primitive dinosaurs. Years were spent searching for signs of advanced civilizations. The planet no longer held value, and the mystery of the disappearance of humans was never solved. Fortunately, the dinosaurs were friendly, and none waged war against the others. This next poem is another take on the future of Earth. It's called It's the Economy. In another galaxy, far from Earth, residents live peacefully, mindful of nature's gifts, balancing current needs against future demands. They have a robust economy, supported by a fleet of transport ships capable of carrying goods to and from other galaxies. They watch Earth, waiting for climate change, violence, disease, and famine to extinguish all life, and prepare for the future when they will salvage materials from our expired planet. They had symbols to their maps showing Taj Mahal, Lincoln Memorial, Leaning Tower of Pisa, Parthenon, Sun Yat-sen's tomb, and other gleaming landmarks. They devised plans for carrying white marble to their galaxy, a material not found where they live, but highly desirable and apparently plentiful if one looks around Earth's attractions. The advertisements will read, "Genuine imported marble from the lost cities of Earth." Their economy will continue to flourish. And now I want to read the poem that appears in the anthology. It's on page 233. This poem was written in November of 2024, shortly after the election. Reading it today, you might think it was written more recently. Starved for democracy. When stores start to ration toilet paper, people talk about pandemic times, although there is no rampant disease. Milk is seldom available. People begin to point fingers at the government and realize that farm subsidies have been discontinued. Even when food is offered for sale, it's more expensive than ever before, like potatoes for $15 a pound. Where people even have a small plot of land in city or suburbs, they try to grow their own potatoes and vegetables. The economy slowly collapses while government deficits soar. And some commentators talk about the Great Depression. There are some who argue over who is to blame, but most worry about how they will feed their families. Grocery stores close because there is nothing to sell. No bakers bake bread because no farmers grow wheat. Eggs cannot be found for sale because animals understand, in a way humans do not, that the end is near. In small towns and large cities, dogs and cats roam the streets. No longer fed by humans, they return to their wild origins. People talk about whether to eat them, and some do. And although no one has COVID, the outcome is the same. Body bags rest in refrigerated trucks because the morgues are full. For some reason, there is still diesel fuel, perhaps due to collusion among major governments around the world. This will never be explained. Duly elected representatives who promised to fix the economy, who set plans in motion they are now unable to reverse, stay alive, using their official privileges, while their constituents die of hunger. Starvation conquers a first world country, and the people who once lived in the greatest democracy on earth do not cast votes from their graves. Thank you.
Well, Fran, present.
Yes,
We, as Fran said, we actually had the call for submissions all through 2024, and we really saw America's Future initially being somewhat of a celebration of this beautiful mosaic that is our country. With the election, we extended the submission time, and as we did, the submissions got darker. So the collection, I would say, as Poets and Writers Magazine has said, is one of the joy and resilience amidst the political turmoil of the United States. Fran, you just gave us one of the most dark pieces in the collection, so thank you. But I do think we're going to see joy and resilience too tonight. But our focus changed as we rethought where the country was and really thought this was a chance for the Washington Writers Publishing House and the writers who are so powerful in this area to speak some truth to power. And you do that too, Fran, on a serious note. Our next writer also does that on a more satirical note. Edward Balfour is the author of the novel A Very Innocent Man and the short story collection Wanderers. His novel is here for sale. His fiction and essays have appeared in numerous literary journals, including Shenandoah, the Baltimore Review, and Tampa Review. He lives with his beautiful wife in Maryland and is here with the very DC-based satirical story, Portrait with a Bullet Hole. Edward Balfour.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Julia, for putting on this show, and thank you all for coming out. This is, I'm going to read from the story that's in the anthology, and, well, I won't be able to read the whole thing, but, okay. It goes with the territory, Dr. Andrew Carr told his wife, Laura Woolridge Carr, over a celebratory dinner turned gloomy at the Old Ebbitt Grill. By it, he meant the sniping that greeted her appointment, announced earlier that day by President Dreck as head curator of the National Gallery. Her husband, she knew, spoke from painful experience. What had he to show for his own decade-long tenure as the president's physician, but the humiliating sobriquet Andy Candy, hung upon him by the world's most unmanageable patient and gleefully adopted by the same White House staffers who, emulating their boss, had worn away his scruples with their unceasing demands for painkiller and Adderall. Never, though, had she endured such derision, and given the typically low profile of the position, the reaction had left her shocked and disheartened. Art critics, academics, and even her fellow curators denounced her as just another of President Dreck's grossly unfit appointees, a dilettante with an undergraduate art history degree that, absent her husband's White House connection to the White House, might have qualified her for service as a docent. The whisperings of her ostensible allies, however, hurt her even more. A slender, hazel-eyed Tennessean of 47, she had an ovular face with a fair complexion, strikingly long eyelashes, and an upturned nose, and she wore her frosted platinum hair in a pixie cut. From the day of her and Dr. Carr's arrival in Washington, her youthful appearance had engendered much debate among the women in President Dreck's orbit, many of whom bore the ravages of botched facial transformations as to what cosmetic work, if any, she had had done. Her appointment to head the National Gallery, which had surprised her as much as anyone, had inflamed the spite and envy of those women. They speculated, often in graphic terms, as to the favors she must have given the president in return for the job. Knowing President Dreck as she did, Laura suspected that if he had not started the rumors himself, he had done his best to spread them. When he had first dangled the job offer before her, he insisted on her meeting him alone in the Oval Office to discuss the terms. Aware of his reputation with women, she hesitated before agreeing. To her relief, he did not proposition her during the interview, but at its conclusion, when he escorted her to the door, his hand slid down her back and came to rest upon her buttocks. Furious and determined to prove her detractors wrong, she relegated her gauzy slit dresses to the back of her closet, donned gray and navy blue business suits, and routinely worked 70 and 80-hour weeks. Such was her dedication that even on that surreal morning when driving into town, she found the streets lined with military vehicles and police and National Guard troops, and road closures necessitated a treacherous mile-long walk to the National Gallery over slush-covered sidewalks. She made it to her office on time. Because her much put-upon husband was not answering his phone that morning, and she had made a conscious effort of late to avoid hearing or reading the news, the better to remain ignorant of the slings and arrows directed her way, she was perhaps the last person in Washington, D.C. to find out that the president had declared a state of emergency in the district. A policeman in riot gear stationed outside the mall side entrance of the West Building informed her when she arrived. When she asked him why, he shrugged, and when she told him that she needed to retrieve some important documents from her office, he refused to let her inside, though she was shivering from her long walk through the chilly streets. His supervisor, however, proved more amenable to her pleas, which she accentuated with a few well-timed tears. Notwithstanding what she told the police, her dignity, rather than some spreadsheets, was her actual concern. The last time the president had declared a state of emergency in the district, a celebrated Monet on loan from Musée d'Orsay had gone missing from the museum. The theft, occurring barely a month into her tenure, had roiled U.S.-French relations and brought down a fresh storm of opprobrium upon her head. Her least favorite Washington Post op-ed columnist, the paper's one remaining reliably liberal voice, wrote, "As for," I don't think there are any left now. So I was overly optimistic in my view of the future, I guess. As for Ms. Woolridge Carr, we can now have no doubt as to why she was hired: to avert her eyes while the president's cronies, ever on the lookout for new and innovative forms of graft, make off with the museum's treasures. Whether or not the rumors that the Monet now occupied a place in the private collection of one of the president's billionaire tech mogul cronies were true, Laura knew that some within or adjacent to the administration coveted the museum's treasures. Recently, Vice President Saar had given a speech outlining his vision of a reimagined high-tech National Gallery filled with holographic images of the masterworks that visitors could alter to their liking. Afterwards, she asked the vice president what would become of the original paintings in the collection when the holograms had replaced them. And he spoke, vaguely but alarmingly, about investment opportunities for collectors. She would not now allow another theft on her watch, she vowed, no matter the cost to her or her husband. Hewing to her custom, she shed her running shoes as soon as she reached her office. She kept several pairs of shoes locked away in a cabinet, most of them suitable for walking around the building, but one with stilettos in case of surprise visits by dignitaries. On this morning, she opted for the latter, for she sensed that the additional stature they provided might prove useful. Barely had she made the change when she heard a loud banging coming from outside the building. Rushing to the rotunda, she saw the doors on the Constitution Avenue side swing open. Several dozen men, clad in the black fatigues and gold-trimmed black berets of the Drex Army militia and carrying AR-15s, came charging into the building. She wondered what had happened to the policeman who had guarded the building from her with such zeal. Had he stood aside for the militiamen? Jogging up the steps to the rotunda, the men halted at the top. With the president's twin sons, Walter Dreck Jr. and Chip Dreck, taking their places at the head of the group, the militiamen formed a column. Walter and Chip, also in uniform, did not carry AR-15s, but had holstered sidearms attached to their belts. Rather than military boots, however, they wore black Christian Louboutin dress shoes. While Laura Woolridge's car stood frozen, the men, led by Walter and Chip, marched past her, three abreast, and down the hallway, their heavy boots thudding against the polished stone floor. "Fight for Dreck! Fight for Dreck!" they shouted. Midway down the hall, the column turned again into a gallery filled with 17th century Dutch portraiture. Laura Woolridge's car, rousing herself at last, ran after them, the clacking of her stilettos echoing through the corridor. And I will stop there because, thank you.
Just loved it, Edward. The biting satire, you'll have to read the end and find out where the bullet comes in. So we're back to our poets. We were started in 1975 by 4 hippie poets, including Grace Cavalieri, who is still involved with our press at 94. But our next poet is a new poet to us, Nea Misra. She's an award-winning poet, a contemporary eco-folk artist, and climate justice advocate. Her interdisciplinary studio builds bridges between private, collective, planetary healing and justice, which we all need. She's a first-generation immigrant from India. She calls a solar-powered community on the border of DC and Maryland her beloved adopted home here in America. And she's an artist whose work, the last time we were here, hung on these walls. So I was so thrilled to meet her. Nea.
Thank you so much for having me. And as Caroline said, this is very special for me to be here because my first debut poetry and art show, Dreams of Earth Renewal, was right here. And I'm so grateful to Sandy Spring Museum and the community and how special to be here today. So I want to share with you 3 poems. And the first one is the one I have in the book. It's on page 348. And I actually wrote the poem before I voted for the very first time as a new citizen in a US presidential election in this past year's elections. And here we are, the gifts of democracy that keep on giving. This poem is called "You Are Cordially Invited to the Head of State Renaming Ceremony." And as I read, I invite all of you, join me in taking a deep breath to come back to the body as you can. So one deep breath. You are cordially invited to the head of state renaming ceremony. Given the state of affairs, the state is dispelling the inheritance of its disembodied head. No matter how bright or dim the state of the head of state and your own, the state invites you to get out of your head to inquire. How is the state of our nation's heart to summon the source of daily courage? How is the state of our nation's lungs to breathe together in depth and ease? How is the state of our nation's gut to know right from wrong? How is the state of our nation's stomach to discern the pangs of hunger from greed? How is the state of our nation's spine to stand by the values we love to preach? How is the state of our nation's kidneys to filter the toxic waste? How is the state of our nation's rest of the body? How is the state of our nation's head in relation with the soul? How is our own state in this whole state of affairs? Thank you for receiving. That is on page 348 of the book. Thank you. This second poem is about the sacred in a world that is profane, because how we are and how this time is. It's called Searching for the Sacred. We are surrounded by sacred places everywhere. We are surrounded by sacred places everywhere. Grocery stores, post offices, bus stops, hair salons, building elevators, lush summer trees, naked fall trees, ground beneath your feet right now. Gas station, subway, where you were nourished and deliciously called sweetie by a new auntie who fed you yesterday. Squares and rectangles of strange, elusive intimacies of phones and computers. Inside of the right wrist of the lost lover. We are surrounded by sacred places everywhere. This is where our everyday worship, celebration, sacrifice, penance, the most sacred of rituals happen. This arriving to ourselves and others that we choose to carry and to ceremoniously dispel. In this rite of life's passage, passing the platter of all the rights and wrongs. These are the sacred places where our true religion reveals itself. Thank you. And this third and final poem is a reminder and an ode to all of us and this time and all times. It's called Enough. Enough. I am enough. You are enough. We are enough. This room is enough. Enough sunrise constellations pouring from enough windows. This life is enough. Enough has been given. Blue skies, tree sculptures, cloud dancers, firefly fireworks. Enough tenderness of strange knowns and unknown strangers. Enough has been received. Lavender aromas, cricket lullabies, moonlight laughter, lingering loves. Enough. But the earth is burning because it is never enough. The remembrance of forgotten songs in my bones, enough. This canvas size to play with, enough. This space to be a space traveler of a new imagination, enough. This poetry balm on old, old new, new old, new wounds, enough. My needs enough, the aftertaste of hunger satisfied, enough. Time we had enough, time we have enough. The moments of releasing the invisible chains, enough. Enough in this world of more is forever less. You are enough. The cloak of benevolent giving over cruel taking, enough. Enough gaslighting that made breathing in your presence shallow enough. Violence of your silence, enough. Enough is enough, enough already. I have had enough. Enough said, enough heard, enough lost, enough gained. What we lost again, in that gain, enough. We have been alone together, together alone, enough. There is a dance of death all around us, enough. Enough. Let us finally live enough. Thank you for listening enough, and thank you for enough work on bringing this absolutely magical weaving of community and hope and resilience together enough. Thank you so much.
I don't think we have quite enough of Neha, so thank you. Thank you. Our next writer is K.Y. Drew, AKA Dr. Catherine White, MD. Her work appears in several anthologies, not only America's Future, but our earlier anthology from 2021, This Is What America Looks Like. Many journals, including Gargoyle, New Verse News, Loch Raven Review, where her essay was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Most importantly, her memoir, Stress Test, was published in 2024. There are copies here by Apprentice House, and it's a must-read. I've read it. It's a feminist memoir of her early days in medical school and doctoring, and I think her story in America's Future reflects that lived experience. So K.Y. Drew.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline, and the wonderful Washington Writers Publishing House. You guys do so much for writers in the DMV, and we really appreciate it. And thank you, Julia and MoCo Underground, and thank you all for being here. My story is on page 253. It's called The Wanderer. It's post-apocalyptic. Now that there was only one jar of peaches left, plus some jerky, it was time to move on, to try her luck in another abandoned house. She didn't know where. Marlowe shook her head as she sorted through the closets for anything that might fit and might hold up under adverse conditions. She would probably be living rough for a while. The mirror on the bedroom door revealed a tall woman, raw-boned but muscular, with skin weathered beyond her years, nearly black eyes, and dark hair in a long braid. Marlowe moved regularly after the Great Collapse. She'd been in this house for over 20 months, a personal best. Her go bag and first aid kit were always at the ready. Besides practical necessities, the go bag contained a small fabric pouch of her treasures, her wedding ring, a picture of her parents, and a small, smooth stone from the garden of the place where she and Idris had been living when the last plague hit, which she considered her true home, the home she'd never see again but would always carry in her heart. If Marlowe listened strictly to her head, she would find some way to settle here. Besides the generous supply of canned food she'd encountered on arrival, had the previous occupants been Mormons, doomsday preppers? The spacious, well-appointed house was totally electrified with wind and solar from sources on the property. Her vegetable garden had proved successful beyond her expectations, and her years of wandering had taught her to provide food for herself. She could shoot and dress a deer, trap and prepare wild birds for roasting, gather berries and mushrooms in the woods. But her solitary heart yearned for company and urged her to move on. There had to be others out there, others like her who had been immune to all the plagues. Marlowe was a child of the latter 21st century, born in 2075 in Washington, D.C., during the time of the inundation when sea level rise drowned much of Anacostia and the entire wharf neighborhood and swamped the National Mall and the tidal basin. The Thomas Jefferson, FDR, MLK, and World War II memorials protruded from the waters like misplaced lighthouses. In coastal areas all over the world, large populations were drowned or displaced. Climate change deniers had run amok with the federal government after the disastrous 2024 election, ensuring that the worst-case scenario predictions for sea level would come to pass. Marlowe started working as an EMT when she was still in high school. Her best friend's father had died of heat stroke on a construction project. After that, she wanted to save lives in a hands-on, immediate way. Once she'd passed the course at 16, she worked in the field all summer and did weekend shifts throughout the rest of her high school years. There were accidents, heat stroke, and illnesses like malaria that had become endemic as far north as Nova Scotia. It was deeply fulfilling work, even though there was such a great need that there were never enough caregivers like her to go around. When Marlowe was 18 and just starting to work full-time after graduation, a plague rolled across the planet. The symptoms resembled those of septic shock from a bacterial infection, but no bacteria were ever isolated. As with the early days of COVID in her grandparents' time, the elderly died in large numbers, while young, healthy people usually recovered. EMT services were overrun by this new pandemic. Marlowe treated patients and ferried them to hospitals nonstop for 12 hours at a time, working 6 days a week. She would have worked 7 if they'd let her. Despite working at full capacity, she never became ill. Her colleagues were out with the illness for weeks at a time, and a few of them died. The culprit was ultimately identified as a highly transmissible mutant pox virus, similar to smallpox. Chickenpox too, but mostly smallpox. Anyway, woo, okay. Vaccines were rolled out, the pandemic abated. Marlowe never tested positive or experienced symptoms. As the crisis waned and their schedules returned to normal, Marlowe began to date one of her colleagues, Idris, several of whose shifts she'd cover while he was ill with the pox. He was handsome, charismatic, and intelligent, plus he adored her, seemingly as much as she did him. Within 6 months, they were married. Idris. Marlowe stopped flipping through the coat hangers in the closet and sat down abruptly on the floor. She reached into her pocket for the picture she always carried on her person. Idris grinned at her from a setting he loved, Rock Creek Park, where they hiked whenever they had a chance. She'd caught him right before he told her he was ready to get naked in the hot tub with her. The sultry look in his thickly fringed brown eyes could still make her breath catch. She closed her eyes and let herself go back there, a thing she couldn't afford to do very often in these recent solitary years. It hurt too much. The memory that followed was of Idris writhing on their bed, the sheets soaked around him, aching all over, nauseated, confused, his temperature 105 degrees. He must have caught the newest plague virus on his last shift, the airborne variant of Ebola that was killing people faster than COVID or the pox ever had. She wore her protective gear as she nursed her husband, though she knew by now that she must have some kind of immune system mutation that Idris didn't share. Her eyes glazed over as she remembered lifting his head to give him sips of water. When he vomited blood, she knew it was all over. And not just for Idris. As the death toll mounted exponentially, news commentators began to speak of the Great Collapse, the institutions of civilization crumbling right before their eyes. Eventually, there were no more commentators, only human remains in every permutation and combination, and the all-pervading smell of death en masse. Marlowe shuddered at the memory of those first several months, seeking shelter in other people's houses once her food supply ran out. She figured that of the roughly 9 billion people alive before the collapse, no more than 1% could have survived. Survivors. Marlowe's hunger for human contact gnawed an emptiness in her that rivaled any physical hunger she'd ever experienced. Sometimes in her peregrinations, she would see shadowy figures in the distance, especially at twilight. Her heartbeat would quicken. Her legs moved faster, even though she was exhausted. She saw people in pairs and groups, engaged in earnest conversation, laughing, shaking hands, even hugging. But no, when she blinked, they were gone. The first time this happened, she was devastated. Her grief threw her off for days. She only walked 10 miles that whole week instead of her usual 30. It had been many months since Marlowe encountered evidence of recent human presence in the woods and fields she traveled, the empty towns and cities. In the years since the plague and the subsequent collapse, the infrastructure had started to melt back into the earth. Roadways overgrown with vines, street pavement fractured by weeds and small trees. There was an eerie beauty to the crumbling buildings and the gradual encroachment of nature on human structures. The regreening of the earth in the post-Anthropocene was taking place faster than she'd thought possible. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Okay, I have to say, I love it when you submit work to us because I will know it will be so exact, so precise, so vivid. It's just a gift. You have a gift, as most people here today who are all with us. Our next writer, a poet, is also someone with a gift. And I have to actually give a shout out to my partner in all things literary who couldn't be here tonight, Jonah Colson. So there's 2 names on this book. It's edited by Caroline Bach and Jonah Colson. Jonah is my co-president. He is the poetry editor. He's the reason I can work at the Washington Writers Publishing House because I know I can always turn to him. We've been co-presidents together since 2022, and I think we're having a lot of fun building this community because of you and because of our partnership. So I'm going to say thank you more than once tonight, but thank you. Thank you to Jessica, who her ears may have been burning because Jonah was saying today, "Oh, please tell Jessica I say hello." So Jessica Simon is a poet and an author of Built of All I Shape and Name, 2 different books from Kelsey Books. One book, I'm sorry. Let me start again. Built of All I Shape and Name from Kelsey Books. Her poem, Even After, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She works at Brady United Against Gun Violence, volunteers as a writer in residence with Day 8, and lives with her family in Silver Spring. Her poem is dedicated to her daughter. The title, I Thought I'd Have Good News for My Daughter. I read it again this afternoon. I wish I had written it for my daughter. I will let you share it with all. Jessica.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That is probably the highest praise. My name is Jessica Genya Simon, and thank you so much to Jonah and Carolyn for making this incredible anthology. You should all get it. I'm going to read that poem first, and then I'm going to read a couple poems from my book, Built of All I Shape and Name. And I have copies here tonight. So, I know we've had some poems with sort of the pronouncements. I would say, is this one okay? Whoa, this is on wheels. Okay, hello.
It's a big book.
Yes, oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I thought I'd have good news for my daughter after November 6th, 2024. We do not trust women. We fear them, loathe them, try to control them. I could not wait to show my daughter her face, the president-elect, vice president for 4 years, a beautiful brown face like her own. First woman, first black woman, first South Asian leader of the free world. Instead, I woke up afraid again. Instead, I rock my daughter to sleep, knowing this country is less safe, less loving, less possible for her. And I want to rip the sky to shreds, howl for the coven to boil the brew, conjure curses to turn all these men to swine who bow their heads to this villain and his crew of henchmen, turn their heads to stone. While I weep for an America that could have chosen a bright path, I see the dark past and, yes, a future. Modern-day pitchfork-wielding mobs carry torches back to the Capitol to watch it burn. I must accept, grieve, and move on for my daughter, for my spouse, for those who come after, but I will not forget, America, the day you said no to me and mine. I will not forget what could have been. This is not a forfeit or surrender. This is, sotto voce, a promise, sweet and tender, to rise again. Thank you. Thank you. And now I'm going to do a couple poems from the book. I'll start with the title piece, Built of All I Shape and Name. The gifts my mother gave me, books on shelves, a garden watered, these are treasures, but just as worthy is the dirt beneath. The gift my mother tried to give me, her American child, was silence. My mother tried to bury fear, but at 41, I prune and tend these lush, leafy, potted plants, smelling of girlhood dreams. I sit content in my own home, built of all I shape and name. Born to Holocaust survivor grandparents who relived death over and over after fascism failed to kill them, these parents urged my mother to be dutiful daughter, warned her not to marry for love, but whomever will have you first. Unsaid, those you love too easily die. Do not swim or ride a bike. Life is not amusement. For them, clouds were not clouds, but smoke. Instead, my mother finished tests first with perfect scores, took the full scholarship to Pittsburgh, PA, moved to a new home, fell in love with my American father in architecture, built stability out of steel beams and concrete foundation. On a basement drafting table, my mother finds her instruments, pencil, compass, three-sided ruler. My mother architect designs strong, solid structures that withstand. Perhaps she thought silence could stop the flow of fear to her womb, and for years it worked. I slept peaceful sleep, wrote poems to birds chirping in treetops, believed my arms wings ready to fly. I could not fall until I did. My own nest took many years to build, decades to weave together the question I needed to ask and answer. Why did my skin crawl with fear? I carried carefully chosen twigs of inexplicable superstitions in my maw, found colorful scraps crawling on hands and knees amidst weeds, pricked my fingers on evergreen blades hidden in the dead of winter. Observed the dandelion in a sidewalk crack, stepped on hundreds of times, grow. Thank you. And on a lighter note, this is called Apology for the I'm Sorries. This is not. It's just going to fall down. Okay. Apology for the I'm Sorries. I apologize for the I'm sorries that escape my mouth in advance of saying almost anything. The apology I give because I am the wrong kind of woman, wrong size, wrong sex, wrong sexuality. I mean, I am short, squat, my belly protrudes over top my jeans. I apologize for a clitoris that feels pleasure when plucked. I apologize for my loud tone, my aggressive tone, meaning louder than you, or that I believe in what I am saying. I apologize for my opinions, that I have them in the first place, that I dare to say them or argue my rightness and your wrongness, or speak at all in a room full of talking men or a room full of quiet women. I apologize for my volume being too brash, for my cackle laugh, for how I am dressed in too short mom jeans and a slogan t-shirt, or too tight jeans, for my butt not being tight or high enough, for my breasts being different sizes, for the blood falling out of my vagina, for not being dressed up enough, for my hair being too kinky or too curly or straightened or not, for my makeup being applied incorrectly, too little eyeliner, too much foundation, not blended in, not enough rouge, or not applied at all, for the hairs on my upper lip which are not blonde, for the stain of chocolate ice cream on my pants, for the chip with salsa I just dropped onto the carpet, for the insult that flew too quickly out of my mouth. I apologize in advance before I say what I think. I apologize in case you or the room feels uncomfortable. I apologize for the truth I feel compelled to speak. I apologize to myself for over-apologizing. My God, I am so good at feeling so bad. Learned so young to be a good girl, to feel sorry for being bad. How the hell did I learn to give a fuck so often? To feel sorry for being bad? What in a day full of apologies can an apology even mean? Thank you so much.
Okay, Jess, can I say I'm not sorry you were here? So our next writer is the one writer we have this evening who is writing nonfiction, who's going to give us some truth about her life and her family. Sarah Perdue lives in Maryland and is a mother of 5. She writes creative nonfiction and humor pieces. Her writing interests include travel, immigration, adoption, foster care, and special needs parenting. She's currently working on a collection of nonfiction narratives exploring the experiences of individuals in Romania. Her piece resonates, I think, more today than it did when I accepted it. Sarah Perdue.
Thank you. This is actually the first piece I've ever had published, and so thank you to the Washington Writers Publishing House for taking a chance on a new writer. Not new to writing, but new to sharing my writing. And so today I stand before you as a new writer, but mostly as a mom. The first time I met Elena and Mateo, they were dressed in matching blue sweatsuits. Her pants were a size too big and were bunched on the side with a twisted rubber band. His sweatshirt had a tag that read 5T hanging down his back. They looked up at me as they spun back and forth in the office chairs. Hola, I said cautiously and sat down beside them. My Spanish was, and is, pretty limited, so I pulled out some crayons. They colored while the caseworker went over the paperwork from the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. The kids were not related to each other, and both had been separated from their parents at the southern border. The administration in D.C. decided that all children seeking asylum, regardless of who they arrived with, needed to be separated while their adult companions were vetted. They would go to a detention center or, if available, a licensed foster family. Elena arrived at the border with both parents. Mateo arrived with just his father. Both spent a day or two in Texas before flying north to Maryland. I don't know how they came to the United States. I don't know if their families presented themselves to an immigration officer or if they were intercepted crossing the border. All I knew was that there were hundreds of kids like them who were trapped in limbo because of a policy change. One minute, I watched children waiting in a large gymnasium on the evening news, and the next minute, we had a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy sitting in our living room. When we got home that night, it was after midnight. They were physically exhausted, but fueled with fear and the surprise of being in a new place. They found comfort in cartoons and a bowl of cereal, the only food they recognized in our kitchen. When I finally got them into bed, I thought about their parents. Did they wonder if their children were safe? Were they worried about them being cold? I had a hard time when my kids went to overnight camp, and I couldn't imagine being separated and not knowing when I'd see them again. We saw the first real smile from Mateo after a week. He was full of 5-year-old energy. He enjoyed making circles with his scooter in our driveway and blowing bubbles in the backyard. And he was afraid of the dark. 3 nights in a row, he peed in his laundry basket instead of risking the trip to the bathroom. It took halting conversations with Google Translate and adding a 4th night light to his room to resolve the issue. Each evening, we helped him call his father. Mateo would put the phone on speaker and animatedly talk while he drove his Hot Wheels on the rug. Afterwards, his dad would ask to speak with me in English. How much longer, he would ask. I never had an answer. Foster families were usually the last to know what was going on. 3 months into Mateo's stay with us, it was his father who informed me that Mateo was going to fly out to meet him the next day. He was allowed 1 suitcase, and I stuffed it full of clothes and toys. He would have been happy to leave with nothing. All he wanted was his papi. Someone from the agency flew with him to another state. At the airport, they handed over Mateo, his bag, and a folder with written instructions to follow up on Mateo's asylum case. We were never able to learn what happened to him or any child after they left our home. Life just went on. Elena took longer to warm up. We connected over press-on nails and hair ties. She loved watching movies, and her favorite movie was Finding Dory, the story of a fish who is separated from her parents and goes on a journey to find them. Every few days, she would ask to watch it. During the credits, she would go to her room and cry. I worried maybe it was too much. Maybe it wasn't healthy for her to continuously watch a movie that always ended in tears. I also wondered if it was exactly what she needed, a repeated reminder that families come back together. 4 months after Elena arrived, we got the call that she was going home. Her parents were sent back to the country they originally fled. I was told to bring Elena to the office at 11 p.m. for her to catch an international red-eye. I packed a special carry-on bag with activities, Ziploc bags, and wipes in case she got sick. 2 officers were accompanying her. They stood in full black uniforms, their thumbs tucked into their thick belts around their waists. I told them about the supplies in her bag. They nodded, but seemed horrified at the possibility of dealing with vomit. While waiting for paperwork, the caseworker did a video call with her parents. Elena bounced in her chair, telling her mom how excited she was to be going home. Before the call ended, the caseworker asked if there was anything I wanted to say, and she would translate. She turned the laptop around, and I could see an older version of Elena staring back at me with the same beautiful hair and full smile. I looked at a woman, a mom, whose life was so different from mine and yet so much the same. I knew she had spent the last year planning and traveling. She had spent 4 months maneuvering a system that was confusing and illogical. And when it was over, she and her husband were sent back to the beginning. I wanted to tell her that I was sorry. I wanted to say that she shouldn't have been separated from her daughter. I wanted to explain that in her search for safety, her family was used as a scapegoat. Even if they weren't allowed to stay in the country, they should have been allowed to stay together. I wanted to say that I was sending them all my hope for a bright future. But there was only time for one sentence. So instead, I said, Elena brought so much joy to our house. Her mom smiled and replied, "Thank you for taking care of her. She is our sunshine." I hugged Elena goodbye and drove back home in an empty car. I often wonder where the kids are now. Did Mateo's family file the right paperwork and attend his court dates? Had Elena's family tried to come back again? The night before the 2025 presidential inauguration, and 6 years since the kids left, I had a dream about Mateo. I was in a parking lot and he came up to me. And at first I didn't recognize him, but when he smiled, I saw traces of that mischievous 5-year-old boy. He was surrounded by a small crowd of family. He spoke to me in English and then translated our conversation to his relatives. And I told him I couldn't believe how much he'd grown and how happy I was to see him. And then I said, I was worried about what would happen to them in the coming years. Please be careful. It's not safe. Watch out for each other, I said. They smiled back at me. His grandmother put her arm around his waist, and just before I woke up, I heard him say, "We're good. We're safe." And I know it was just a dream, but I hope to God it's true. Thank you.
So how was that for a first time? Woo! Woo! Well, I have to say there are about a dozen writers in America's Future who have confessed that was the first time that they were published. And that just warms my heart and Jonah's heart to know that our community is larger and enriched by your voices. So thank you. Thank you. And in fact, if there are writers here who are looking to be published, we have 2 opportunities. One, you may know that we have a bi-weekly online journal called WWPH Writes. We are currently reading for the late spring, so we do have January and February committed already, but we're looking at March and April. We look for poetry and flash fiction or creative nonfiction up to 1,000 words. We are paying market now. We pay $25. So we hope you use that to pay it forward, buy a book from a small press, go out to a coffee shop and get a cup of good coffee, which looks like it's going to be about $25 a cup soon. But we are looking for your work, so please consider submitting to us. And the other opportunity is brand new. It's not been announced yet, so this is the thing you get to hear because it came out tonight. So last year we put together these really adorable pocket-sized mini anthology. This is called Capital Queer, Pride Celebration from Washington Writers Publishing House. And Joan and I just love them. They're $10 each, and people love them, and they were so much fun to put together that we're doing another one, but on a new subject. And our whole idea is that over the next few years, we're going to do one a year till we have enough to fit in one of those cool little sleeves boxes. So January 3rd, we are opening our new pocket-sized mini anthology for open submissions. This was because the idea came to us late. We didn't have time for open submissions, but now we're organized. So open submissions for, this was Capital Queer. Our next one is Capital Love. So Capital Love will be looking for poetry and prose about love, of self, of others, of community. But love, as Bell Hooks, does anybody here know who Bell Hooks is? A philosopher, a Black writer. Love as an antidote to the power of domination. Love as an antidote to hate. Love is what the world needs now. And I can't actually sing, so I won't, but if you know that song. So love with a little bit of an edge, right? Love is a statement. And we're looking for poems up to 14 lines. I know Jonah's leading into sonnets, so formal poems, but we're looking for all poems up to 14 lines, and we're looking up microfiction, because as you're going to find out, I'm writing microfiction these days. So short pieces up to 250 words, either fiction or nonfiction. And we'll open just for 1 month in January, and we're aiming to publish at least 50 writers, and it will be exactly this size and with like the same sort of punk cover, and we will publish it hopefully by May. We'll have it out at Gaithersburg Book Festival, which we always sell out and show at. So please, as soon as you see it, jump on it and submit, and it will be a paid opportunity. Again, another big, probably $25. But I would love to see everybody who's here think of submitting. So that's our new news, yay! And here's an idea, take Julia's class, creative writing class in January and submit. Synergies. Okay, so we're all doing okay. We have 3 more writers. 3 more writers. The next one is Lori Ward, who is currently pursuing an MFA in the low residency program at Hood College in Frederick, a fabulous MFA program, brand new program, where she is also the vice president for marketing and communications. She lives in Frederick with her rescue dog, Tino. Lori.
Thank you. I will say this is the first thing that I submitted and the first thing I had published. If only they were that easy. So this is a short story on page 281, The Diner. The diner was empty except for an old man at the counter holding a mug between his hands, and a waitress, a woman in her 50s, Jack guessed. The place smelled of old grease and burnt toast, but it was warm, and right now Jack needed warm. He shook the snow off his Carhartt jacket and stomped his boots against the mat, its rubber edges cracked with age. The man at the counter turned and nodded at Jack. Jack slid into a booth and caught the waitress's eye. "Coffee, please?" The woman, her name tag said Shelley, put the coffee in front of him with a small bowl of creamers. "Anything else, hun?" "No, thank you." A flag hung on the wall in front of Jack, the skyline of New York City and the blue field of stars, faded from 20-plus years of sun. "Hell of a wind out there." The man at the counter turned his stool to face Jack. "Yeah, and the visibility is shit." He glanced at the man's hands, rough and scarred from more than age. "Where were you that day?" Jack didn't need to ask which day. "4th grade. Our teacher wheeled in a TV and we watched until our parents could get out of work to pick us up. We heard some of the fighters scrambling out of Fort Drum. We didn't really understand what was happening. And then, almost as an afterthought, did anyone?" The man nodded. His eyes sagged at the corner, as if his smile would never reach them again. "I was there." He picked up the baseball hat that sat on the stool next to him and held it for Jack to see the front, FDNY. Jack didn't know how to respond. "Cool. Sorry." The man waved his hand. "Nah, just life. Someone had to be there, but..." He took a sip of coffee and placed it back on the counter. "All that rubble, all those lives, what did we build out of it?" Jack shook his head. "Nothing. We went to war with the wrong country, and 20 years later, what do we have to show for it?" "Lose anyone that day?" "Not really." He took a sip from his chipped white mug. "My father enlisted because it's what you do." He used air quotes, and there was a bitter sarcasm in his voice. "Did he make it back home?" "Yeah, but..." Jack sighed. "Not the same. His father had come back different, quieter, heavier, and not able to return to his old job as a warehouse manager. He couldn't handle the noise. He didn't like being around people. Growing up, Jack had hoped for more than his dad had. But here he was, working the same warehouse job, living in a small rental with his pregnant girlfriend. None of us are the same after that day. Whether it was the right decision or not,
The man stopped and looked out the window. You ever get picked on when you were younger by some older kids hoping to make you cry? Of course. And what'd your dad say? Fight. Jack stopped, and a small smile crept onto the man's face. Fight back. Fight back. You didn't always win, but you stood up for yourself. And that bully thought twice about messing with you, didn't he? It's a little simple, ain't it? The man stood and slid into the booth across from Jack. What do you remember most from that time, from the days and weeks after? Jack scanned the restaurant, seeing past the age displayed on the walls and floor to the comfort and warmth of the place. The flags. He looked out the window at the black sky and could see the flags. Every house had a flag, every highway overpass. You couldn't find flags in stores, so people started using red Solo cups and fences to spell out USA. The man held his mug between his hands, clacking his wedding band softly on the side of the cup, letting the silent conversation seep into Jack's thoughts. Outside, the snow spiraled against the night sky. Through the window, out of the diner, a retired FDNY captain sat at a booth with an expectant father. Strangers trying to make sense of that senseless day, but smiling at the days and months that followed and hoping to get there again.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for submitting to us, for trusting us with your work. I now have the great pleasure of introducing Julia Taglieri, who many of you may know organizes this wonderful event, is, I heard, on the board of directors now of the Sandy Spring Museum. They are lucky to have her. Her work has appeared in Gargoyle Magazine, The Writer Magazine, and elsewhere. She earned her Master of Arts at Johns Hopkins. She joined the Writer Center as their Undiscovered Voices Festival. She serves as editor for the Baltimore Review. She's a past Maryland State Arts Council grantee, a 2025 VCCA Fellow and Breadloaf Fellow. She is also a Pushcart nominee for her work in America's Future. The American Question really grabbed not only me, but our other readers with the anthology for its incisiveness and its visual art and language. And I hand the mic over to my good friend, Julia Taglieri.
The American Question. 1. January 20th, 2009. He said we could that day, and we believed him, because the better angels of our nature were exactly who we hoped to be. 2. November 5th, 2024. Today, he'll say we can. Just ignore those angels' voices. Angels are suckers and losers. He'll swear a new oath to us and the world that we are all now free. Thus freed, we can now rage at those we other. We can spit at them, grab their, deport them, pillage their savings, force preferred families into leaving, and tear unwanted families apart. We can swallow this planet whole, chew it up and spit it out on a gilded platter, repackage that into charity and weapons and sell it cheap to the leaders of all those other shithole countries who fear us as much as they need us, as much as they hate us. Liberated from any archaic sense of guilt or shame, we can dishonor our parents and all the other suckers and losers who came before us. The ones who, if they can still see us, we can righteously claim would join us in celebrating this joyful day when we can finally lie, cheat, steal, rape, and break every other fucking commandment or law or rule they ever taught us because, oh yes, oh joy, we can plaster new copies of all our favorite Old Testament writs on the walls of our schools and courthouses and prisons and camps. We can slap them up right beside the fading replicas of the Declaration and the Constitution, those other updated and outdated myths we used to use to teach our children and our children's children about our better angels. But now on this glad day, we can finally teach everyone, even the youngest child, our unfettered, unconquerable truth that yes, oh yes, we can do these things, all of them, and we always could. Even on the Sabbath day, especially on the Sabbath days, but naturally only during halftime because billionaires need to eat too. We can post the rules because that is how we learn we can break them. Oh, yes, we can. We fucking can. 3, January 20th, 2025. Today, our better angels will need to show their work again. We'll need to answer this question we believed we had already settled so many, many times before. Can a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that we are all created equal long endure? Endure or fall, we can at least expect a definitive answer, and it will be a relief. We weren't created to hold our breath for so long. 4, Anthem for an Unknown America. Oh, say, can we? Thank you.
Actually have a special guest. I hadn't expected one of our press members to show who's been with the press since 1997. And his work is in America's future. He has been an active and involved and passionate member of the Washington Writers Publishing House. He is a stellar poet. He's the author of 5 books of poetry, including the award-winning work Vocabulary from 1997 at the Washington Writers Publishing House. We reissued it in 2021. He drove up here from Hyattsville. I'd like to ask Sid Gold to read a few poems, and then I will wrap up the evening.
I didn't expect to read. I just came to support the press, because there are a lot of people here I hadn't heard before, and a few people I had heard before, so we're new. I tell people all the time, which is the truth, that my acceptance of my manuscript by Washington Writers Publishing House was a life-changing experience for me. Because I was 47. At the time, I thought of myself as, a little old, okay? Now I realize I was a young man, okay? I'll never see 47 again. And I'd been sending out for years, like everybody else. So, that kind of support, that kind of, recognition that all of us who's written here knows, you always wonder whether you're wasting your time, right? And you wonder whether, forget about whether anybody else cares, we know who else cares. But you wonder whether you're wasting your time. You get single poems published, you still wonder whether you're any good or not, in the real sense of being any good. So this was some validation, because it's a blind read. And Marty Galvin was president then, and we're very close to the deadline. I knew where he lived, in Chevy Chase, so very close to the deadline. I drove over there, put my manuscript behind the screen, and just dropped it off. And, whatever. In the oncoming months, all the big university reading periods were coming up. Whatever, 20, 25, 30, whatever it was in those days, a shot. When I did that in the past, I'd come back, the manuscript would come back with a number on it. I'd be number 562. That's how many manuscripts University of Michigan Press and those people used to get, with no comments. And I'd been encouraged by other people in the area to submit to Washington Writers Publishing House. And one thing I was told is you would have a lot of control over the manuscript. And I wasn't sure what all that meant, but since then I've met a lot of people who've been published by well-known university presses, and they appreciate the prestige. But I understand now what they meant by you're going to have a lot of control over the manuscript. I also learned that, and I've told a lot of these people and they've learned it, we'll actually do more for people than a lot of those university presses do. Almost all of them. But of course, you can't say no to that opportunity if it comes up. I'm going to read two poems from Working Vocabulary. And it's a dark book, so I had to thumb through it and find some poems that weren't very dark. And reissuing it was a great thing because it looks better than the original did, and it has a great introduction from Hallie Carrick, who really knows how to read my poems. So this, we all categorize poems our own way, and this harks back to an experience when I was in grad school and, scraping by. I was at SUNY Brockport in Western New York, where I spent a lot of years of my life. And probably many of us, regardless of our station in life, have done this kind of thing because we always have jars of change, right? So this is called pennies. And I guess I got $11 out of this, okay? Pennies. One summer I was a bit short. I emptied the dark vase across the kitchen table, turning it mouth down with the deliberate art of my elbow raised, and rolled 22 wrappers of pennies in one sitting. I watched them gather, flat, round grubs skidding away from the steady light of an overturned stone. Some were high orange. I plucked those first, forefinger and thumb working like hungry men. The scent of copper's dull grease remains on my hands. There is nothing new about this. It has been done by every one of us. The boarded entrance to the mine frames my campfire against the night. Dry leaves and 2 blankets make a fine bed. Okay, thank you. People who don't know me know I've lived in a small apartment in Hyattsville for every years. I was telling a good friend who I don't know that many years, who's a lot younger than I am. I've lived like a graduate student my entire adult life. So, okay, this is a poem that makes my Catholic friends tell me I'm really a closet Catholic, but of course I'm not. But I grew up in the 5 boroughs. I grew up in 3 of the 5 boroughs, and I played a lot of basketball, and you meet a lot of Catholics. And if you're inquisitive, and in that culture, stuff runs off on you just like Yiddish rubs off on them, So this is Last Rites, and I guess Catholics see the Catholicism in it more than I do. Last Rites. I'm a member of no church, and hence it is fitting my patron is a saint with no name. From a village found on no map, in a valley no pilgrim can reach, his relics, about which tradition is vague, vanished long ago, lost with those folios of his meditations, not stolen by thieves on the road to Rome. And the 2 faded likenesses that survive are remarkably unalike. Despite his suspect hagiography, I remain undiscouraged, tethered to my faith like a guard dog, for no singular reason save that when I am alone, I feel no presence other than his, hear no voice other than his whisper, counseling me, urging me to do nothing, often in his name. Thank you. Okay, where are my glasses? What else did I have? Nothing. Okay. It's always nice to be in North Montgomery County.
Well, as Sid was mentioning, we do have our annual manuscript contests, and we open them for our next round April 1st. And we will be looking for poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction, memoirs or essays this year. We'll be open from May 1st through June 30th. And when you publish with us, you get a $1,500 award. You get all publication costs. You get editorial and promotional support. And you get to be a pressmate. And if you're like Sid, you're here going on 30 years. So we have many members who have stayed with us. And we really encourage you, if you are working on a book, to submit to us. That said, I'm Caroline Bach. I'm the co-president. I'll introduce myself, Julia, thank you. I'm here already. I'm like, so you can, I had asked Julia to introduce me, but I'll say that I'm the co-president. I'm the author of Carrier Home, which won the Fiction Award from the Washington Writers Publishing House. I'm the author of 2 young adult novels, Lie and Before My Eyes from St. Martin's. And my big new news is I have my first novel for adults coming out in June. It's called The Other Beautiful People. Thank you. It's a workplace love story, and you're all invited to Politics and Prose June 2nd, because that's when it's launching. So, but I also write, as many of you know, micros. These are the short 250-word pieces or less. And I'm writing a whole series under a title called I Should Have Slept with Them All. And they're very close to the bone autofiction pieces. And some are sexy and some are more autobiographical. And I will read one tonight that's brand new. It was just published in a gorgeous publication called Art Wife. And this is very, very close to the bone. It's called Like Cats. We raised ourselves. We had Pop, of course. He stayed. We had our mother. We didn't lose her, though that's what people said. We knew exactly where she was, the state hospital. We sometimes visited. All this was a long time ago, and we should get over it. That's what one brother says. The other brother says, I don't remember a thing, in such a way that we know he remembers everything. Our sister used to cry about it, claw the furniture, tear up papers. Our brothers chased one another's tails, bit each other, and collapsed into dapples of sun. We ate from the same bowl. We lapped up gallons of milk. We were well fed. Pop wanted it to be us against the world. He didn't ask for help. No one offered it anyway. We climbed trees, made our own way down. We were rowdy on nights Pop was out tomcatting. We weren't rich or poor. We were always struggling. We didn't talk about her when we weren't visiting, and we were mum after each outing, mewing against one another in the basket of the back seat. And when Pop announced no more visits, we didn't see her for a long time. One after another, over the years, we all scattered, prowled into the night, no longer curled up against one another, no longer looked for spots of sun. We slept with others. We slept with anyone who would be warm against us. We slept with them all. We raised ourselves. And I will end on my piece in America's Future, which is also hopefully part of the series of micros. And I always have to remind myself I'm on page 355, even though I laid out the book with Jonah Colson. This is an American lament. She's strange, isn't she? Strolling through the park at this hour. A starless night with a storm threatening, wind and rain, more rain than we've seen in months. The grass in the park hasn't been cut for weeks. She's singing now. Would you call it a dirge or a lament? Texts one neighbor to another. Not even in English. If they knew it was about communal grief, would that make them think differently of her? The words can be interpreted as our Father or our King, though she prefers now our Father, since she's addressing them to his ghost, calling on him to wrap the snow-scented winds around her thinly shawled shoulders, to see the slash of deer, of fox and raccoon that cut through the fir trees, to hear her ask, "Snow." He knows how she loved snow. "Alvinu Malkenu," she sings out. "Alvinu Malkenu." They wonder if one of them should call her cute husband or just be done with her. The strange neighbor night singing. Stranger than us, emoji, laughing face with tears. Let's call 911 before something happens, they conclude. Here, she is free of all the regrets of a dutiful life. The only one with her is Pop, a ghost who agrees that she should stroll the park anytime she likes, that snow would be better than rain, that she should have slept with them all, that America should be better, and that she should sing louder. Sing for snow, sing for tomorrow, sing. So, thank you all. Thank you for coming on behalf of MoCo Underground, on behalf of the Washington Writers Publishing House. Thank you. Please stay connected to us. Sign up for WWPH Writes. It's free to subscribe to. Consider buying one of our books from one of our wonderful authors. Have a cookie. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody, too.